Hello, welcome along everybody to another episode. I'm here today with a man who I have a lot of faith and trust in. It's Kevin Kirkpatrick. Kevin, can you introduce yourself?
Good. Hello, Adam. So yes, my name is Kevin Kirkpatrick. I'm currently the VP of Search Services for Optimum Talent. Spent about the last 16 years in recruiting and healthcare, and you and I have worked together a good bit over the last year or so.
Yeah, exactly. So the reason I want to talk to you today is because if you think back when we started working together, like as a business, AppleChat, we didn't have any clients in North America, and you ended up as the director of recruiting at a hospital, selling that solution internally to the VP of HR. And I think a lot of people that we speak to aren't really familiar with how to do that. So I kind of want to talk to you today about whenever you see a problem, how do you go about solving it with an external partner, and then how do you actually sell that internally? So first question is, like, when you actually see that problem existing, for example, shortage of nurses, how do you actually go about looking for solutions to it?
So to step back a little bit, when I look at any sort of solution or any sort of problem, I always put things into three separate lenses. There's the lens of, what will it do for the hiring manager's experience? The second lens is what will it do for the candidate experience? And the third lens is what will it do for the recruiter's experience? So if a solution will hit on at least two of those three lenses, then at that point it's something that's viable and makes sense to go through the process of trying to implement. Usually I like to take a look at where that solution will fit in my process, and then evaluate different vendors for that solution based on what problem I'm trying to solve. So when it came to not enough nurses, we looked at what are the different things that we're doing and what are the things that we're not doing, and where in our process are we falling down. And our process was falling down generating candidates. So that's why when we looked at different solutions to identify more candidates, we thought, okay, well, Facebook. And then the challenge is that there's a lot of people doing Facebook work, but it's looking for a true partner that adapts and that customizes your solution and stands behind the results, which is how we ended up landing on working with AppleChat.
Okay, and I'm happy that you did. First of all, how did you actually go about searching for the potential vendors? Did you Google it? Did you go on LinkedIn? Where did you look?
So it's a combination of things. I actually heard about you through a podcast that you were on. Shout out to Chad and Cheese. And I liked the idea of what you were talking about and how you explained explained it. So then I said, okay, well, I'll Google and look at what other options exist. So working for a publicly funded hospital, I need 3 quotes for anything before I do it. So I had to get 3 quotes, talk to 3 companies, and then pick who I had the best value and the best return on investment.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. That kind of leads me on to, you said you needed 3 quotes, so you had 3 conversations. What is important in that conversation with the vendor?
You know what? It's about relationships and about who's going to fix the problem and who's going to be accountable for it, right? And I think that's the challenge is that finding someone that listens to what the problem is and then administers a solution versus someone who spits out a solution hoping that it'll fix your problem, right? I mean, the distinction between the two is really, it's minimal, but it's important, is that I don't want you selling me X when I need Y, right? So it's really finding that partner that will, help you close the deal, so to speak, and will help you understand the solution and its value and be able to give you the ammunition, so to speak, to then better sell it internally.
Okay. And on selling internally, I know from my experience, a lot of talent acquisition directors or recruiting directors, they need to take solutions to higher level to get it approved. What advice would you give to people who are maybe doing that for the first time, or they don't know how to do something, and like they don't know how to get something they want actually approved by the director or the vice president?
Well, I think it comes down to how you frame it, and how you frame it. I like to put it things in two aspects. One is, it goes back to the three lenses that I have, right? Like, I'd like to identify that the solution is going to target, two or three of those lenses, so that, because each lens is also a stakeholder. So if I can say this solution is going to impact three stakeholders within the organization, then okay, well that shows us that there's potentially an appetite for it. The other aspect, and specifically in healthcare, is looking at some form of data to support your position. And that data could be someone else's previous success, right? So if you take the career fair that you and I did, right, what ended up helping me sell that to my internals was that if we looked at our past successes and how many hires we got in our previous Facebook ads, and took a number of that, and then took that number and divided the total cost of the career fair, you came up with a cost of hire of around $2,000. So what I did is I compared that to a cost of hire that would be done by my existing team. So the existing team had about an $1,800 cost per hire, right? But that existing team was already at a capacity. So I was able to sit here and say, okay, for very little above the same cost per hire, we're going to get the results, because this is where we got the results. This is where the cost per hire was. So once they realized from a financial term that the cost per hire wasn't outrageous, right? And then you compare things to other solutions, like, oh, I can advertise on a journal, a medical journal, but that's going to cost $1,400, and there's no guaranteed cost per hire. That's just a pure cost. Whereas within this confine, based on past track record, I could come up with a predictable cost per hire that was reasonable. So then I can present numbers to them that says, that identify how it's not outside of the realm of true cost.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, because I think are the people you're presenting to thinking more in terms of the numbers rather than the actual ins and outs of the solution?
Two things is that obviously they want the results, right? So if you can identify how this solution is going to generate the results, then and how it's going to impact the organization, then that's the first thing, right? But in a hospital, especially one like ours that is publicly funded, unfortunately, finances are a very large thing, right? If I had my druthers, I could spend $250,000 a year on recruiting tools, but I unfortunately don't have that ability. So when I look at where I'm going to spend money, I have to identify what the return on investment is going to be, and I have to identify that it's not out of the realm, right? So, being able to show the value and the cost per hire, how it's not ridiculous, then that goes a long way to get buy-in. And it doesn't help if you can sit here and look at an external problem, like, oh my God, we have short staff on this unit. We think we can hire for that unit, which is going to reduce overtime. So then it's like, okay, well, an overtime shift costs X. So if we can reduce one overtime cost, and it's going to be less than or equal to the cost per hire expenditure, then lo and behold, it becomes considerably more contextual for them. So if I say this unit is currently spending $10,000 a week on overtime because they have one FTE that's not filled, but I can hire one FTE for $2,000. Well, guess what? I'll invest the $2,000 to save the $10,000. Right. So it's just putting it in conceptual terms. And healthcare practitioners are very data driven. These are very analytical, very best practice focused, and academically focused. So going to them with this is a really cool tool, I think it'll help, doesn't resonate. But if you can sit here and draw the numbers and say, okay, well, it's a reasonable expenditure and will eventually save money in X, then what happens is you put it in terms that in language they understand.
Okay. So do you think if it's a brand new thing that you haven't done before and you don't have those figures, like asking the vendor what their previous cost per hire would be, something that would be useful?
Everything I do, I try and talk to other people that have done it. And that's where the value of networking and having relationships with vendors and your other hospitals makes a lot of sense. Now, if somebody called me and said, "Hey, what did you do with AppleChat?" Then I can automatically talk to them that the first campaign resulted in 3 ICU hires. That if we had to go to a search firm, would have cost us $60,000, and it cost me 3,600 or something like that instead. Well, that's clearly definable. A massive return on investment. So when that hospital calls me, I can tell them what my experience was, and that validates what that vendor's saying. In the instance where the vendor is new, then you just sometimes have to take a chance, right? And but then you just limit how much of a chance you take. Just like the first project we did was for literally like 3 months, and it was done on a wing and a prayer. But by the end of the 3 months, we had results that justified the fact that the relationship's been going for a year, because of that, right? So sometimes you got to be a little bit courageous and just take a chance. But I think if you've done all of your homework, you've networked, you've talked to other people about solutions, and then you make an educated decision, then that's all you can do.
Okay. And I think a thing you mentioned to me was the relationship that you have with that ultimate decision maker is quite important. How do you go about cultivating a good relationship with that person?
Yeah, so you know what? It comes down to understanding their style of communication and understanding what they value. So luckily for me, my boss at Humber, where we did the work, was phenomenal and understood my expertise given how long I've been in it. So as long as I communicated in terms that she understood and showed my rationale for what I was doing, then she was really good at understanding why, and then she would stand behind it, right? Because she would take faith in me. But her faith was built on the fact that I did my homework, right? I didn't just say, "Hey, let's buy this," and stuff like that. So you have to sell to them first, and then hopefully if you sold to them well, they will then sell to their higher up and stuff like that, right? So it's just a matter of meeting a need as opposed to just trying to add something fun, and communicating that to them. And then I think the rest of the time, it just comes down to, I would communicate with her every day, right? Because anytime something cool happened, I'd send her a note saying, "Hey, I just got this really amazing candidate." So building this relationship of continual communication and giving her stuff that she could then put in front of her boss that showed her team's success, built a relationship that allowed for her to advocate for this stuff I did, because it made her look good too, right?
Yeah, I think that's what everyone wants, to look good. I want to just close by asking, is that different now you're in a more a staffing agency or recruitment agency setup? Do you have different advice for people who are on the agency side?
No, because it's really the same thing. At the end of the day, I'm in the midst right now of reviewing different tools, and I'm making a business case to my boss, right? So the difference is it's a cost versus return. So if I could say, okay, last year, based on what was being done and how things were being done, this was the revenue that was generated. I'm asking for, let's say $300 a month or $3,600 a year in tools. it should generate 2 more placements. So it should generate another $50,000 in income. So are we willing to invest $3,600 to make another 50,000? Right? And then it breaks down. I have to break down the actionable items. So, will it allow me to reach out to 10 more people a day? So based on 10 people, that should result in 1 new client engagement. So therefore, every week I should be able to get 1 new client engagement, which then means I should get an additional 52 client engagements a year, which should result in an additional 10 placements a year, which is X amount of income, right? So it's treat it like a business case, right? And treat it like, this is the investment, but this is the return that we're going to get for that investment, and these are the aspects of the day-to-day that are going to improve, right? Don't buy, like, I'm cheap, right? It comes with the Scottish side, so I'm not going to spend money for the sake of spending money, because I need to spend money that is definable and is going to show me a return, whether it be in time, which can then be I could say, well, it's going to save me five hours a week, which based on what I make is X hundreds of dollars. So everything has to be quantifiable, because otherwise you're just flopping around like a fish trying to find different things to fix a problem, where if you haven't analyzed the problem and analyzed the solution, then you're just throwing darts at a wall.
Yeah. Okay, I think what I've learned from this is to kind of have all the numbers available, like as many numbers as possible, to help build the case.
Numbers are hard to argue, right? Like,
yeah.
At the end of the day, it's hard to argue a defined and laid out number, right? Like I showed something to my boss the other day where we're bringing on a consultant, but my risk is minimal because the terms are short, and every month that expense comes on, we've got a revenue automatically directed to that expense. So my risk is super low, right? And in all honesty, I have no financial risk by bringing this consultant on, because their time is directly being paid for by our client. So it's just, as long as you're mindful of the numbers and what that looks like and quantifying something, then it's a lot easier. And I learned that a long time ago, that especially with healthcare people, these are very educated, very intelligent people. They don't make decisions on whims, right? They know how much of a narcotic to give based on science, not based on, I think 5 milligrams or 5 milliliters is appropriate, right? It's based on science. So these are factual people. You can't argue fuzzy stuff. You have to give facts.
And on that note, I'm going to bring us to a close, because I think we're not going to improve upon that. And that was great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Adam.
Everybody listening or watching, you can connect with Kevin Kirkpatrick on LinkedIn. And if you need any physicians for your hospital, just let him know. So thanks so much, Kevin. I'll speak to you later.